Welcome back, everybody, and this time I'm going to be reviewing Death's Daughter and the Ebony Blade. Now, we only have really three main characters. There are other characters, but they're not as important to the story as these three because the story's focused on just these three. So starting off with our first character, we have Olivia, which is the main character. Followed up by Olivia, we have Claudia, which is her co-captain of the army. And followed up by Claudia, we have Ashton, which is the strategist of the army. Now, for the story, Olivia ends up training with Z, and who is Z, you might ask? Well, Z is kind of like an entity known as Death, but he's not really the only Death because there's a bunch of more like him living out through the world. But he's the one that ends up training Olivia, and one day Z just disappears. So Olivia goes on a journey to find Z again. But what Olivia does, instead of just going on the journey, she ends up going to the country to work as the army, to work for the army. And she ends up working as a foot soldier because, of course, every other person starts in the army like that. So she ends up gaining rank, and eventually she has her own little squad with Ashton and Claudia. And the story from then is just Olivia, Claudia, and Ashton doing battle with the other countries. Meanwhile, their superiors are having their own little chat and seeing what the other countries are up to. But we also get a little bit of insight of how the other countries are doing, as long as with how they think about our little Olivia. And then from there on, it's just how Olivia is just moving up in the world, and she's getting closer to finding out what happened to Z. But there isn't really much about what happened to Z. It's mostly just like little things that we can't really put together yet. So for now, we're just in the dark as much as she is. And that's all for the story. Now, for my thoughts about the story. Well, so far, Volume 1 was just the initial build up about the whole world, and I really enjoyed reading it. It kept me, even though I liked my OP protagonist and my power fantasy, Volume 1 really isn't kind of that. Sure, she ends up killing one person like nothing, and he ends up being a big deal that the other country couldn't kill him and such. But besides that, it's mostly kind of like politics and, well, mostly like military politics. And she just plays the part of a strong commander. Now, for my thoughts about the whole thing, well, Volume 1 starts off really good because it sets up the whole story for the rest of the volumes. And Volume 2 to 4 is just her doing battle and her moving up the world and finding out what happened to her little mysterious Z. And we also get some insights about other countries. And there's also this one country he knows about quote unquote magic. I say quote unquote because it's not really magic, it's kind of like an intimidation of magic. But of course, Olivia is able to handle that very well. And you'll see that in the further volumes. I don't really want to spoil anything because it's actually a good read and it kept me just keep reading and keep turning the pages. But I really enjoyed it. The characters are really thought out and they really resemble their personalities with the drawings and such. But what I do wish is that me as a person, I'm able to follow military politics well, because every time I'm reading it, I have to kind of like map it out in my head and seeing what's happening, what who belongs to what country. And this volume doesn't really have that like in the front or back cover of like the relationships between countries. So you kind of just have to map it in your head or just write it down. Now, besides that, I really think it's actually worth it to read because it's really good and it just kept me turning each volume. The characters are really thought out. The battles are actually pretty good, and we get to see the strategist do his thing. And hopefully, with that, you guys pick it up and read it and let me know your thoughts about it. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.